I was 3 minutes old when I met my psycho adopted brother. For the second time in our last life. He destroyed my sister, broke her legs, shattered her mind. But here's the thing. I know that she didn't. He can hear your thoughts. So when he stared into my bassinet with those cold amber eyes, I didn't scream. I didn't flinch. I opened my tiny baby mind and said, "Big brother, your hands look cold. Do you want to hold me?" And, for the first time in his life, someone said the right thing. The psycho adopted brother. The one who nearly destroyed my sister in our last life. In the previous round, he'd been a shadow over her entire existence. Cold, controlling, terrifying. By the time she finally escaped his grip, her legs were ruined and her mind was shattered. Now he was standing over my bassinet. Amber eyes fixed on me with an unreadable expression. I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I was literally 3 minutes old, but internally, I was already working. "Oh, hello. You must be my big brother." His eyes widened just a fraction. I kept my inner voice warm, soft and deliberately innocent. "You look sad. Don't be sad. I'm here now. I'll make everyone happy." He didn't respond, just stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. My mother, still exhausted and blissfully unaware of anything dark, mailed up at him, "Lucian, come meet your little sister, Claire. This is your brother, Lucian." Even the name sounded like winter. He didn't move closer. He didn't smile. He just looked at me with those cold amber eyes, and I could feel him testing me. In our last life, my sister had screamed inside her head the moment she saw him. "Who's this creep? Why is he staring at me like that? Get away from me. Weird." And he'd heard every word from that moment on. He'd hated her. I wasn't going to make that mistake. Instead, I focused all my energy on sending him a single pure thought. "Big brother, your hands look cold. Do you want to hold me?" "I'm very warm." His breath caught. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly he reached out. My father, Ethan, immediately tensed. "Lucian, be careful. She's tiny." Lucian ignored him. He slid one hand under my head and the other under my body. Perfectly impossible, gentle for someone who radiated such danger. And lifted me. I looked up at him with my newborn eyes, which probably saw nothing but blurry shapes. But he didn't know that and let out a tiny coo. Then I curled my minuscule fingers around his thumb. "See, I like you already. You're not scary at all." His lips parted slightly. Something flickered in those cold eyes. Prize maybe, or the faintest crack in his armor. My mother cooed from the bed. "Oh, my goodness. She already loves you, Lucian." My father didn't look nearly as pleased. He watched his adopted son holding his newborn daughter like a hawk, watching a snake. But he didn't say anything, because Lucian had never been gentle with anyone. And here he was holding me like I was made of glass. I filed that information away for later. The first few days of my new life were a masterclass in manipulation. Not the evil kind, the survival kind. I learned quickly who could hear my thoughts and who couldn't. My parents, Lucian, and a few key household staff members were tuned in. The doctors and nurses, nothing. So I could think freely around them. I used my inner voice strategically. When my mother cried from postpartum exhaustion, I thought, "Mommy is so tired. I wish I could make her tea. I'll be a good girl and sleep quietly so she can rest." He burst into fresh tears, happy ones, and kissed my forehead 100 times. When my father came home from work, stressed and grim, I waited until he held me and then thought, "Daddy works so hard for us. He my hero. When I grow up, I want to be strong like him." He literally teared up. The billionaire CEO crying. Because a 3-day-old baby thought he was cool. The staff started calling me the little empress behind my back, respectfully. But Lucian was the real challenge. He didn't warm up quickly. He'd stand in the doorway of the nursery watching me sleep, his face unreadable. He never spoke to me unless our parents were there. He never asked to hold me again. So, I changed tactics. One night, when the house was quiet and I knew he was the only one awake, I sent out a thought just for him. "Big brother, are you lonely?" No response. But I felt him pause in the hallway outside my room. "You don't have to be lonely anymore. I'm here. I know you're not scary. You just pretend to be scary because no one ever protected you, right?" Silence. Then slowly the door creaked open. Lucian stood there in the dim light, his amber eyes fixed on me. His expression was still cold, but there was something else underneath. Something raw. He walked to my bassinet and looked down at me. "You're strange," he whispered. His voice was low, almost rusty, like he didn't use it much. I blinked up at him and let out a soft gurgle. "I'm not strange. I'm your sister. And I'm going to love you until you forget how to be sad." His jaw tightened. He reached down and touched my cheek with one finger. Just the lightest brush. Then he pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't say things like that." But he didn't leave. He stayed by my bassinet until dawn, watching over me, like a guard dog who'd finally found something worth protecting. I smiled internally. Phase 1 complete. Meanwhile, in the other wing of the hospital, my sister was having a very different experience. I couldn't hear her thoughts. Our inner voices weren't linked, but I could hear the actress screaming through the walls. You call this a private room? There's a draft. My baby will get sick. Where's my champagne? I specifically requested chilled champagne. She looks like a wrinkled potato. Are you sure she's mine? The nurses exchanged exhausted glances. The actress had refused to name the baby, calling her it and that thing. My sister, meanwhile, was apparently living up to her reputation. I overheard one nurse whisper to another, "That baby hasn't stopped crying since she was born. And she has this glare. It's baby." Another nurse nodded. The mother doesn't want her. She asked if we could keep her in the nursery all night. Said she needed her beauty sleep. I sighed internally, "Oh little sis, you really stepped in at this time." But I wasn't going to waste energy worrying about her. She'd chosen her path, I'd chosen mine. And mine came with a 5% stake in a billion-dollar company, and a psycho brother, who was slowly melting under the power of my imaginary love. Not bad for a week-old baby. The first real test came when I was 10 days old. My mother, Saint Complex Kitten, just like the king of hell, had warned she'd heard through the hospital grapevine that the actress in the next room had abandoned her newborn. No name, no visitors, no interest. So my sweet, naive mother did what she always did. She tried to save everyone. "Ethan, we have to do something." I said, cradling me in her arms. "That poor baby. She's all alone." My father frowned. "She's not our responsibility, sweetheart. But she's Claire's age. They could be friends someday." My mother looked down at me with those big, hopeful eyes. "What do you think, Claire? Should we go meet the baby next door?" I felt my tiny heart rate spike. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. But I couldn't say that out loud. I could even think it too loudly because my mother could hear me. So I thought carefully. Mommy has such a kind heart, but maybe that baby is sick. Maybe we should wait until she's better. My mother hesitated. Nurse said she's healthy. Just difficult. I tried again. Daddy looks tired. Maybe we should let him rest first. Ethan immediately perked up. "Honey, Claire's right. I am exhausted. How about we revisit this tomorrow?" My mother sighed, but nodded. "Okay, tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night because I knew my sister, and I knew that if my mother brought us together, chaos would follow. The next morning, my mother dressed me in a tiny pink outfit, pleated with a bow that was almost as big as my head, and carried me down the hall. My father followed, looking resigned. Lucian brought up a rear, silent and watchful. The actress's room was a disaster. Clothes everywhere, empty champagne bottles. The actress herself was on her phone, screeching at someone about a cancelled photo shoot. She barely glanced up when we walked in. Oh, the billionaire's wife come to dock at my misery. My mother, ever gracious, smiled. "I came to see the baby. Is she?" The actress waved a hand toward a bassinet in the corner. "Take her." I didn't sign up for this. My mother's face fell a pity. She walked over to the bassinet and looked inside. I couldn't see my sister from where I was. My mother was still holding me, but I heard her gasp. "Oh, you poor thing. You're so tense, and your little face is all red from crying." She reached down and picked up my sister. And that's when I finally saw her. My sister in her new body. She was small, taller than me, scrawnier. Her face was pinched and unhappy. Her eyes already sharp, with an intelligence that didn't belong on a newborn. And when she saw me, her eyes went wide with recognition. Then her mouth opened, and a thought shot out aimed directly at me. How did you?" I cut her off instantly. "Shoo, they can hear us. Keep your thoughts clean." Her face contorted with rage, but she clamped her mouth shut. My mother, oblivious, was cooing over her. "She's so tiny. What's her name?" The actress snorted. "Doesn't have one. You can name her if you want." My mother looked up at my father with those pleading eyes. "Ethan," he sighed. "Fine, but she's not coming home with us." Of course not." My mother lied. I could already see it happening. My mother's savior complex was kicking into high gear. In a week, she'd be begging my father to adopt my sister. And if that happened, everything I'd worked for would fall apart. Because my sister would ruin it. She always did. So I did the only thing I could think of. I started crying. Loud, piercing, inconsolable crying. My mother immediately panicked. "Oh no, Claire. What's wrong? Are you hungry? Tired?" I kept crying and I don't feel good, Mommy. I want to go home. Please take me home. My mother looked torn, but my father stepped in. "Honey, Claire needs you. Let's go back to our room. We can check on this baby another time." My mother hesitated, then nodded. She handed my sister back to the nurse and carried me out. As we left, I caught my sister's eye. She was glaring at me with pure, undisguised hated. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she thought. I smiled, just a tiny invisible smile. "I don't think, little sis, I know." Back in our room, I settled down immediately. My mother laughed in relief. "She just wanted her mommy," she said, kissing my forehead. Lucian, who had been watching the whole exchange from the doorway, stepped closer. His amber eyes studied me for a long moment. Then he spoke so quietly only I could hear. "You did that on purpose?" I blinked up at him with my most innocent expression. "I'm just a baby, big brother." "I don't know what you mean." His lips twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "Liar," he whispered, but he didn't sound angry. He sounded impressed. That night, as the hospital settled into silence, I heard a soft knock on the wall between our rooms. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps. My sister's signal from our old life. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. I focused my inner voice and pushed it through the wall. "What?" Her response came back instantly, sharp and bitter. "You win this round, but don't think I'm done with you." I yawned internally. "You were never a threat to me, little sis, not in our last life. Not in this one. Go to sleep." Silence, then so faint I almost missed it. "I hate you." I closed my eyes and thought back. "Soft and sweet as honey. I know, but I don't hate you. That would be too much work." And somewhere in the room, next door, my sister screamed. The nurses rushed in, the actress cursed, and I slept like the angel baby everyone thought I was. The next morning, my mother announced we were going home. The Carter mansion is brawling estate, with more rooms than I could count, a private garden and staff who answered to "yes, ma'am," and of course, Lucian. As the car pulled away from the hospital, I stared out the window at the retreating building. In that room, my sister was still screaming. In this car, I was silent, peaceful, and already planning my next move. Because the King of Hell had given me one more piece of information. Before I left, the experiment has a time limit. By your 18th birthday, one of you will have to return. The mother gets to stay permanently. So this wasn't just about survival. This was about winning. And I had every intention of being the one who stayed. "Don't worry, little sis. I'll send you flowers, fake ones. You don't deserve real." I smiled and let my mother kiss my forehead. The game had only just begun. The game has a time limit. My sister and I are both reincarnated, both fighting for one permanent spot in this world. By our 18th birthday, one of us goes back. And I fully intend to be the one who stays. My sister is in the room next door screaming with rage, already plotting against me. But here's what she doesn't know. I have Lucian, I have our parents, and I have an 18-year head start on being the perfect daughter. Game on, little sis. Game on. The Carter mansion was less of a home and more of a fortress disguised in ivy and white marble. For the first 5 years of my life, it was my kingdom. I didn't waste a single day. Survival in a reincarnation deathmatch wasn't about waiting for the enemy to strike. It was about building a moat so wide and filling it with crocodiles so vicious that the enemy would drown before they even saw the castle walls. My best crocodile, of course, was Lucian. By the time I was 3, Lucian had evolved from a brooding, silent shadow into my personal, terrifying guardian hound. He still rarely spoke, and he still possessed that chilling aura that made the household staff avoid making eye contact with him. But around me, the ice thawed. He didn't play tea party with me. He didn't know how, but he would sit in the corner of my playroom for hours, his cold amber eyes tracking my every movement, calculating threats that didn't exist. I kept my mental broadcasts strictly curated. If I tripped and scraped my knee, I didn't cry out in pain. I would project a soft, trembling thought. "I'm okay. I have to be brave, so Big Brother doesn't worry." Before my father could even turn his head, Lucian would be there, scooping me up with impossible gentleness, his eyes flashing with a dark, terrifying promise to murder the floorboards that had tripped me. My father, Ethan, noticed. He was a billionaire CEO, a man who built empires by reading people, and he wasn't blind to the unnatural devotion his adopted psycho son had developed for his golden-haired toddler. It unnerved him. But as long as Lucian was entirely focused on keeping me safe, Ethan allowed it. Meanwhile, my mother remained blissfully wrapped in her saintly delusions. She thought her love had fixed Lucian. I let her believe it. But I always knew the peace was temporary. The King of Hell had set a timer. The inevitable happened when I was 6. We were in the sunroom having breakfast when my mother answered a phone call. I watched the color drain from her face. She dropped her silver spoon, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, dear God," she whispered. "That poor child." Across the table, Lucian went completely still. His eyes locked onto me, sensing the immediate shift in the room's atmosphere. I kept my face blank, but internally I sighed. "Here we go." "Ethan," my mother said, her voice trembling. It's about the actress, the one from the hospital.
Sylvia.
She was in a car accident last night. A drunk driving incident. She didn't make it. Ethan lowered his newspaper, his brow furrowing. That's tragic, Kin. But why are they calling you? Because of the little girl. My mother choked out, tears already welling in her eyes.
She is no one, Ethan.
No family. Social services found my name in Sylvia's emergency contacts. She had put me down years ago after I sent them those care packages. I mentally applauded my sister's handiwork. There was no way a narcissist like Sylvia had remembered my mother's name. My sister, let's call her Eve, for the sake of simplicity, had orchestrated this. She had placed the breadcrumbs, knowing my mother's savior complex would compel her to follow them. We have to take her in, Ethan. We have the room. We have the means. Honey, adopting a 6-year-old is a massive commitment. We don't know anything about this child. I decided it was time to intervene. I set down my glass of orange juice, widened my eyes to maximize the innocent, angelic gleam, and projected my thoughts clearly enough for both my parents and Lucian to hear. Mommy is crying. The little girl has no mommy anymore. That's so sad. I want to share my toys with her, so she won't cry in the dark. My mother gasped, rushing over to pull me into a suffocating hug. Oh, my sweet, perfect angel. Do you hear her, Ethan? Our Claire has the purest heart in the world. Ethan's resolve crumbled instantly. He looked at me, his eyes softening. All right, we'll bring her here, temporarily at first, to see how she adjusts. Over my mother's shoulder, I made eye contact with Lucian. He was staring at me, his head tilted a fraction of an inch to the side. He knew exactly what I was doing. At 6 years old, my vocabulary and emotional manipulation were far too advanced. But Lucian didn't care that I was a monster hiding in a porcelain doll's body. He only cared that I was his monster. He gave me a microscopic nod. Message received. Threat incoming. Shields up. Eve arrived 2 days later. She looked the part of the tragic orphan perfectly. She was dressed in a faded black dress, her hair slightly messy, clutching a battered teddy bear. But when she stepped into the grand foyer of the Carter mansion, I saw the feral, calculating glint in her eyes. She took in the crystal chandelier, the sweeping mahogany staircase, and finally, she looked at me. Our eyes met. The air between us seemed to crackle. Nice house. She pushed the thought directly into my mind, her mental voice dripping with venom. Thanks for keeping my bed warm. I didn't flinch. I gave her a bright, beaming smile and broadcasted my thoughts openly, loud enough for the entire room to hear. Wow, she's so pretty. I'm going to be the best sister ever. I hope she likes me. My mother practically melted into a puddle. Eve, sweetheart, she cooed, kneeling down. Welcome home. This is Claire. She's been so excited to meet you. Eve forced a shy, wavering smile.
Sure.
But she made a fatal mistake. She wasn't used to the telepathic rules of this house. In her previous life, she had screamed in her head, and Lucian had heard it all. For the last 6 years, living with a neglectful actress, she had no one to practice her mental shielding on. As she looked at my mother, her inner voice leaked out, uncontrolled and harsh. God, this woman is pathetic. Keep crying, idiot. Hand over the credit cards. The reaction was instantaneous. My mother physically recoiled, blinking in confusion. She wasn't sure if she had actually heard it or just felt a sudden, ugly sensation. Ethan stiffened, his protective instincts flaring as he looked at Eve with sudden suspicion. But Lucian moved. He stepped out of the shadows of the staircase, placing himself directly between me and Eve. The temperature in the foyer seemed to drop 10 degrees. He looked down at the 6-year-old orphan with the expression of an executioner appraising a neck. You, Lucian said, his voice a low, terrifying rasp. Keep your thoughts quiet, or I will cut them out of your head. Eve physically stumbled back, genuine terror flashing across her face. She had forgotten the monster she was dealing with. In her obsession to beat me, she had forgotten that I held the leash of the beast that had shattered her mind in our past life. Lucian, Ethan barked, stepping forward. That's enough. She's traumatized. I tugged on Lucian's sleeve. Big brother, don't be mad. She's just sad. Let's be nice. Lucian's gaze didn't soften, but he stepped back, yielding to my mental command. He didn't look at my father. He only looked at me. As you wish, Claire. Eve stared at the two of us, her chest heaving. I could see the gears turning in her head, the sudden, horrifying realization dawning on her. She hadn't just walked into my house. She had walked into a trap I had spent 6 years building. Game on, little sis, I whispered into her mind, locking her out before she could reply. The next 8 years were a masterclass in psychological warfare. By the time we were 14, the dividing lines in the Carter estate were etched in stone. To the outside world, the Carters were the picture of philanthropic grace, the billionaire father, the charitable mother, the angelic biological daughter, and the rescued orphan. Inside the walls, it was a cold war. Eve was relentless. I had to give her credit. Her sheer willpower to survive and destroy me was impressive. She played the victim beautifully to the household staff, who couldn't read minds. She manufactured tears, staged little accidents to make me look like a bully, and tried to isolate me at the elite private academy we attended. But she couldn't beat my mental dominance. She eventually figured out how to lock down her thoughts, putting up a wall of static so my parents couldn't hear her toxicity. But static is suspicious. While she gave them radio silence, I gave them symphonies. When Ethan came home exhausted, fighting board members for control of his company, I didn't just bring him water. I broadcasted admiration. Dad is carrying the whole world on his shoulders. I need to study harder so I can help him when I grow up. He shouldn't have to fight alone. He fast-tracked my involvement in the company. By 15, I was sitting in on board meetings. Eve was relegated to the sidelines, given a generous allowance but zero actual power. Her frustration boiled over when we were 16. It was the night of the Winter Solstice Gala. The mansion was packed with the city's elite. I was wearing a bespoke emerald gown, standing near the conservatory, sipping sparkling water, and mentally cataloging which politicians my father needed to bribe. "You think you're untouchable," a voice hissed. I didn't turn around. I took a delicate sip of my water.
Eve.
"You're interrupting my networking." She stepped beside me, dressed in a red silk dress that was a little too desperate for attention. Her eyes were feverish. "You've poisoned them against me. Every time I try to get close to Ethan or Mom, you're there playing the saint." "I am a saint," I replied smoothly, projecting the thought with perfect, crystalline clarity. "I just happen to be a saint who plays chess while you're playing in the dirt." "We have 2 years left, Claire," she whispered, her voice shaking with raw, unadulterated hatred. 2 years until the king calls time. If you think I'm going back to the pit, you're out of your mind. I will burn this entire house down with you inside it before I let you win." "Is that a threat?" I pushed into her mind, my mental voice cold and heavy. "It's a promise," she shoved back, her mental barriers slipping just enough for me to feel the murderous intent rolling off her. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto Eve's shoulder. She gasped, her knees buckling slightly under the immense, crushing pressure of the grip. Lucian stepped out from the shadows of the conservatory flora. He was 24 now, a towering, lethal presence wrapped in a tailor-made tuxedo. He ran Ethan's security and intelligence divisions, which was a polite way of saying he handled the Carter family's dirty work. "You're breathing her air," Lucian said to Eve, his amber eyes completely devoid of humanity. "Move." Eve's face flushed with humiliation and terror. She wrenched herself free, glaring at me. "He's a rabid dog, Claire. One day, he's going to bite you, too." She turned and vanished into the crowd. Lucian watched her go, his jaw tight. He pulled a white handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the hand that had touched her, as if wiping away disease. "Thank you, Lucian," I thought warmly, smiling up at him. "But you shouldn't worry about her. She's just all bark." Lucian looked down at me. Over the years, the strange, silent connection between us had grown into something absolute. He knew I manipulated my parents. He knew I wasn't an innocent angel. He knew everything, and it only made him more devoted. To Lucian, the world was a rotten, chaotic place, and I was the only thing in it that made sense. I gave him purpose. I gave him a god to protect. "She is planning something physical," Lucian said aloud, his voice a low rumble. "Her thoughts are locked, but her heart rate spikes when she looks at the grand staircase. She's calculating angles of incidence. A push. A fall." I paused. "You read her body language that well?" "I read everything that threatens you." He stepped closer, his imposing frame shielding me from the rest of the room. "Give me the word, Claire. Just one word. I can make her disappear."
Un tragique accident.
Social services will be told she ran away. The parents will mourn for a month and forget. My breath hitched. He was entirely serious. He would kill her tonight if I asked. It was tempting. Oh, it was so tempting to just end the game. But I remembered the rules. By your 18th birthday, one of you will have to return. The King of Hell hadn't said anything about murder. If I killed her, or had her killed, it might violate the parameters of the game. I couldn't risk the technicality. I needed her to lose on her own terms. "No," I told him, projecting calm authority. "We wait. Let her dig her own grave. When she strikes, we trap her in it." Lucian's eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction. "As you command, little empress." The clock ticked down. 17. 17 and a half. The tension in the mansion became suffocating. Eve stopped trying to win my parents' affection. She retreated into her room, spending hours on the dark web, making shady phone calls, and burning through her allowance. I monitored everything through Lucian, who had bugged her room, cloned her phone, and tracked her every movement. She was buying untraceable paralytics. She was researching the architecture of the estate, specifically the cliffside drop at the edge of the Carter property, overlooking the ocean. She wasn't going to try to outsmart me anymore. She was going to kill me before midnight on our 18th birthday. I didn't stop her. I didn't tell my parents. I let her plan it. I let her feel the intoxicating thrill of impending victory. If she was going to play the villain, I was going to give her the grandest stage possible. The night of our 18th birthday arrived. My parents, ever oblivious to the death match happening under their roof, threw a massive dual birthday gala. The estate was lit up like a beacon, crawling with hundreds of guests, string quartets, and champagne towers. The deadline was midnight. At 11:15 p.m., I felt the familiar, sharp sting of a telepathic push against my mind. "Meet me at the Cliffside Pavilion," Eve's mental voice sneered. "Unless you're a coward. Let's finish this, Claire. Just you and me."
No bodyguards. No parents.
I smiled into my champagne glass. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. I excused myself from a conversation with a tech magnate and slipped out the side doors into the cool, salty night air. The path to the pavilion was lit by soft fairy lights, winding through the manicured hedges toward the sheer drop to the Pacific Ocean below. I wasn't an idiot. I knew she had a weapon. I knew she had a plan. But I also had Lucian, who is currently perched in the darkness with a suppressed sniper rifle, a thermal scope, and strict orders not to shoot unless she physically broke my skin. I reached the pavilion at 11:30 p.m. The crash of the waves against the rocks below was deafening. Eve was waiting. She was wearing black, blending into the shadows, her face pale and twisted into a mask of pure malice. She stepped into the moonlight, and I saw the glint of the syringe in her hand. "A paralytic?" I asked aloud, not bothering with telepathy. My voice was calm, almost bored. "Really, Eve? That's so cliché. What's the plan? Jab me, push me over the edge, and cry to mommy that I slipped." "It works," she spat, pacing like a caged tiger. "It doesn't have to be brilliant, Claire. It just has to end you. You stole my life. You stole my brother. You stole the parents that were supposed to adopt me in the last timeline." "I didn't steal anything," I said coldly. "I adapted. You threw tantrums. You refused to learn how the game is played, and now you're angry that you're losing." "I'm not losing," she screamed, lunging at me. She was fast, fueled by 18 years of psychotic rage. But I didn't move. "Lucian," now I whispered in my mind. Before Eve could close the distance, a massive shadow dropped from the roof of the pavilion. Lucian landed with the silent, lethal grace of a predator. His large hand shot out, catching Eve's wrist midair. The sickening crack of bone echoed over the sound of the ocean. Eve shrieked, dropping the syringe. Lucian twisted her arm behind her back, driving her to her knees on the marble floor. He placed a heavy boot squarely on her spine, pinning her down. He didn't even look out of breath. He looked down at her with absolute disgust. "You really thought," Lucian murmured, his voice sending shivers down my spine, "that I would ever let you be alone with her?" Eve sobbed in agony, thrashing against his grip, but it was useless. "You psycho. You monster. You ruined my life in the past, and you're doing it again," she screamed, blood and spit flying from her lips. Lucian tilted his head. "I don't know what you're talking about, but I know I'm going to throw you off this cliff." "Wait," I commanded. I checked my watch. 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes left. I walked over to Eve, my heels clicking softly against the stone. I knelt down so I was eye level with her. She glared at me, her eyes bloodshot, her face streaked with tears of pain and fury. "You think you've won?" Eve laughed bitterly, spitting on the ground near my dress. "The king said one of us has to return. If neither of us is dead by midnight, he takes us both. Or he flips a coin. You didn't beat me, Claire. You just stalled." "Oh, Eve," I sighed, brushing a strand of hair out of her sweaty face. She flinched as if I'd burned her. "You still don't understand the rules of the game. The king didn't say one of us had to die. He said one of us had to return." "What's the difference?" she shrieked. "The difference," I whispered, opening my mind completely, dropping every shield, every barrier, and flooding the area with the full, terrifying weight of my consciousness. I didn't just project to Eve. I projected to the entire estate. But I didn't send my own thoughts. Using the mental dominance I had cultivated for 18 years, I reached into Eve's fractured, chaotic mind. I grabbed hold of her darkest, most venomous thoughts, her hatred for my parents, her disgust for the charity cases, her murderous intent toward me, and I act as an amplifier. I broadcasted her thoughts. Suddenly, inside the mansion, my mother dropped her champagne glass. Ethan grabbed his head. Every staff member, every person who possessed the genetic quirk to hear thoughts, was suddenly bombarded with Eve's unfiltered, demonic screeching. "I hate them. I want to kill that bitch Claire. I want to drain the old man's bank accounts. I wish they would all burn."
D.
Eve gasped, her eyes widening in sheer horror as she realized what I was doing.
Stop. Stop it.
What are you doing? I'm showing them who you really are, I whispered softly. I'm giving them the truth. In the distance, the back doors of the mansion burst open. Ethan and several security guards came running toward the cliffside, drawn by the psychic distress beacon. My mother was behind them, weeping hysterically, the illusion of her sweet, rescued orphan completely shattered. It's over, Eve, I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. They hear you. They know. You are entirely, completely rejected by this world. There is no place for you here. Nobody loves you. Nobody wants you. 11:58 p.m. Eve broke. The realization that she had been utterly exposed, that there was no coming back from this, shattered whatever fragile sanity she had left. She stopped fighting Lucian. She went limp, her mind collapsing inward, consumed by a black hole of despair and defeat. I want to leave, her inner voice whimpered, a pathetic, broken sound. I don't want to be here anymore. Let me go back. Just let me go back into the dark. I looked up at the sky. 11:59 p.m. The air around us suddenly stopped moving. The crashing of the ocean froze mid-splash. The wind died. Lucian froze above Eve like a statue. The guards running toward us stopped mid-stride. Time simply ceased to exist. A shadow separated itself from the darkness of the pavilion. It didn't walk, it simply arrived. The king of hell wore a tailored suit that matched the abyss. His eyes were like dying stars. He looked at the frozen scene, Lucian pinning Eve, me kneeling gracefully on the marble, and the shattered girl begging to leave. He clapped his hands slowly. The sound echoed like thunder. Magnificent. The king's voice resonated directly in my soul, bypassing my ears entirely. A flawless victory. No blood spilled by your hand, yet your opponent begs for the void. You broke her spirit using the very weapon I gave you. I stood up, smoothing the front of my emerald gown. I offered him a polite, practiced curtsy. I play to win, your grace. The king chuckled, a sound like grinding tectonic plates. He looked down at Eve. She is broken. She has forfeited her claim to this reality. As agreed, the winner remains. He reached out a pale, impossibly long finger and tapped Eve on the forehead. She didn't scream.
She didn't dissolve.
She simply folded in on herself, shrinking into a pinprick of absolute darkness before vanishing completely. The space where she had been was empty. Enjoy your life, Claire Carter, the king said, turning his dying star eyes onto me. I suspect you will rule this world long before you return to mine. He stepped backward into the shadow, and reality snapped back into motion. The waves crashed. The wind howled. Lucian stumbled forward slightly, his boot hitting the empty marble where Eve had just been. He blinked, looking down in confusion, then looked up at me. His protective instincts immediately flared. He scanned the perimeter, his hand going to his concealed weapon. Where is she? Lucian demanded, his voice thick with adrenaline. Claire, what happened? I looked at him, the psycho-adopted brother who had destroyed my sister in a past life, and the man who would burn down the world for me in this one. He didn't remember the time freeze. He just knew a threat had vanished. She's gone, Lucian, I said softly, stepping into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, projecting a wave of gentle, reassuring warmth into his mind. It's over. We're safe now. She ran away. Lucian's tense muscles slowly relaxed. He wrapped his massive arms around me, burying his face in my hair, holding me with that perfectly impossible gentleness. She's gone, he echoed, his voice vibrating against my cheek. I've got you. Nobody is ever going to hurt you. Ethan and the guards burst into the pavilion, flashlights cutting through the dark. Claire, Ethan shouted, out of breath, looking wildly around the empty stone floor. Claire, where is Eve? What was that voice in our heads? I pulled back from Lucian and looked at my father. I let a single, perfect tear roll down my cheek. I'm sorry, Daddy, I cried softly, letting my voice shake. She tried to push me, and then she just snapped. She said she hated us all, and she ran off down the goat path toward the highway. She said she never wants to see us again. Ethan's face hardened. The psychic venom he had just experienced was enough to kill any lingering affection he had for the orphan. He pulled me into a fierce embrace. Let her go. Good riddance. She was a poison in this house. Thank God you're safe, sweetie. Thank God. My mother arrived moments later, collapsing into tears, apologizing profusely for bringing a monster into our home. I comforted her, playing the magnanimous, traumatized angel to perfection. Over my father's shoulder, I met Lucian's eyes. He was watching me with that unreadable, intense gaze. He knew I was lying about the goat path. He knew there was no way Eve could have escaped his grip. He knew I was a manipulator, a liar, and a predator draped in silk. And as I smiled a tiny, invisible smile just for him. His lips twitched. The faintest crack in his armor. He didn't care. I was his empress. And the throne was finally, permanently mine.